Hey everybody, welcome to Our Sinclair. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to the track. We're going to play some Grand National.
Get out your wad boat. It's time to lay down the dough.
It's unfortunate that we don't live really close to any horse racing track here in West by God, Virginia, in our particular home.
Oh, that's incorrect.
Ooh, feel free to enlighten me.
You don't have to live near a track if you've got simulcast.
What does that mean?
I used to work at a dog track, y'all, and for a couple years, I was printing racing forms. And at the track, they show all the races from all over the world. Australia Downs, Pimlico, everywhere. Everywhere there's a racetrack, you get racing. Now, we didn't get anything. We didn't get it to Grand National because they didn't do any of that sort of racing. This is just straight up horse and dog racing. Charleston has a track, not Charleston, West Virginia, but Charlestown.
Yeah.
And there are tracks all over. So if you want to get your horse on, you can, or your dog, you can go and do this. Now,
that sounds explicit.
Well, it is what it is. I also have been to the dog kennels. You know?
Okay, you mean like the pound?
No, the dog kennels at the track. They keep the dog. The dogs like hang out there when they're not racing.
Really? They don't go home?
Oh, sometimes they do. These kennels are hideous. I pity a dog that lives in these kennels. They are. I've also been told that the dogs are. There could be some shenanigans with water. You water these dogs up to make them slower.
Right.
Now horses, I don't know. Don't know how
well,
they
something
get it.
tells me that the way that they treat dogs at a dog track is not the same as the way they treat horses. I think that there are many
I would
more.
hope not.
You know, there's a lot more money involved in thoroughbred racing. The dog track is. You never hear good things about greyhound racing.
You know, I watched a race one time from Australian Downs. I kid you not, boat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They ran horses down there in the snow. I didn't know they got snow in Australia.
Weird.
Did you know that?
I didn't know that either. I thought it was hot all the time. Desert environment.
It snowed. One thing I've learned about racing, nothing will stop a race. It has to be a monumental thing. One thing that would stop it, dog racing anyway, was kennel cough. It was something that was very
like whooping
horrible,
cough,
and it would hose all the dogs till they couldn't run.
Right.
You know, and so what would happen is we had an area in our little track where people would come and they would go to what was called mutuals, and they would go in there and
Like mutual Bohan?
They get their exactly. It was a wild kingdom if you saw the people that were coming in there, and they get their racing form. Now most of the people that watched racing that I saw were old people because really horse racing as a pastime seems to be sort of a dying art.
What's like a good cockfight? You're not going to get your young people, gathered around. You're going to get your old salts.
Now, maybe you're onto something. Now, have you ever been to a horse race or a racing track?
I have never been to. Well, yes, I've been to Churchill Downs before.
Okay.
But I've never been while there were races going on.
I see. Now, of course, I work in Kentucky and lived there for a while, so we lived near Churchill Downs, and we lived.
Well, sort of.
Keeneland.
Keeneland
is also
close,
there.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean I live near Churchill Downs. I mean, how many people can, let's say, I live within an hour and a half of Churchill Downs? Not that many.
Well, I mean, we live within 3 hours.
Well, I'm just saying. And so I have not been to the Kentucky Derby, but we used to watch it every year. In Kentucky, horse racing. They told me when I moved there. They said, "Listen." As I was walking into the building my first day, the guy's like, "Hey, do you like bourbon?" I said, "No." I do now, but I didn't then. He said, "Do you like horse racing?" I said, "No." He goes, "Do you like college basketball?" I said, "No." He goes, "You're in big trouble." And he was right. Those are what they do in Kentucky. But the horse racing for hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, has been a very popular sport that's probably on the wane, I would say, at least in this country.
I think that in this country, at least, there are significant risks to the horses. And if you know anything about horse racing, you know that if horses get injured, they don't go through rehab. They get a bullet to the brain. And
right to the glue factory,
and lots of people have a problem with that.
Well, we live in a different era where that is a more prominent concern.
I would call it an era where we care about animals more than we used to.
That's more prominent.
Yeah.
I would agree with you on that. And we don't want no animals to get hurt.
No. But there is something beautiful about horse racing. I don't know enough about dog racing to say positive or negative things about it.
It's less beautiful. I can tell you that.
But there is something sort of majestic about the whole Triple Crown, the Belmont the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness. Every year it gets press here in the United States. When you have a Triple Crown winner, it's always a big deal.
Very rare.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah.
And so this week's game, I approached it with through the eyes of someone that, my dad's from Louisville. He grew up going to the Derby in the infield.
What's where the party goes down.
Right.
The party down
and
there.
so I really was looking forward to playing this game. And so, do you want to talk about it?
Well, I want to talk about, the first thing I noticed about this game, well, two things. One, that it was officially endorsed by the Aintree Racecourse. And so I was like, man, I got to look into this racecourse because we're not, at least none of the tracks I covered did a steeplechase style racing. All right. And the Grand National is, I guess, it's just sort of like the biggest race of this type of racing, right? And Aintree is the legendary place where it happens. Now, I didn't know anything about Aintree. Have you ever heard of this race course, Boat? And you were there. It's in Merseyside, England. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, that's where the ferry goes.
Okay,
you
fair
ferry
enough.
Across the Mersey.
So really?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you making that up? Or are you serious? I can't tell half the time.
It's the land, the place I love.
Okay, you're full of crap. Opened in July of 1829, Boat.
Boy, it's got a pedigree.
No kidding, eh? It says here, this is Aintree Racecourse is in a metropolitan borough of Sefton, Merseyside, England. I've never heard of any of those places. So you'd think you hear about.
Well, you hear about you've heard of Mercy Beat, right?
I don't know anything about
that. Was one of the early pop magazines back when the Beatles were around. The Mercy Beat.
Oh my gosh, I don't know about that. Yeah. No. So, like I mentioned, this track is the home of the Grand National Steeplechase. Now, I'm not real familiar with steeplechase. It's not something that gets ran a lot here. And trust me, when I started playing this game, I was astounded when a hedgerow came up on the track.
This is a big difference between the tracks that are run on the Triple Crown tracks are oval tracks with no steeplechase. There's this is a different sort of sport for sure.
So get this. The Aintree Racecourse is regarded as the most difficult of all courses to complete successfully. It has 16 steeplechase fences, and the obstacles on it are so famous that they're named. Like they got their own names. These things. So that's bad.
Yeah.
All the fences, bar the water jump, are covered with spruce. So you've got that's the greenery you see on these things. So the water jumps are just water. So not only have they had the Grand National race there, they also have other stuff at this thing. Get this. And who'd have thunk this? I'd have never thought this. They've had the British Grand Prix at Aintree 5 times.
Wow.
Must be hard for those cars to get over the hedge. Also, now get this. They also have a 9-hole golf course there, and it had its own railway station until 1962. That's kind of cool. And it had a Michael Jackson concert. So pretty good.
It's had it all.
Pretty good.
If I could host all of those events in Amigo Studios, I'd feel like I'd done my job.
Now here's something else I like. Now this track is this separates the men from the boys big time, and the women from the girls. This, as I mentioned, this thing's long. It's 4 miles long. Okay, and this game you could feel it.
You can feel it coming back again.
Right, and this is. It often will have. It says here they usually start out with 40 horses on this track.
Wow!
I knew you'd love that.
Now, did you talk about Beecher's Brook already?
No, I haven't talked about that.
Okay, so Retro Man Cave says that the killer fence on this course, like you said, all the fences have different names.
That's mentioned right here.
Yeah, Beecher's Brook is the killer fence.
It says here that sometimes they'll have. Like, for example, they mentioned here in the article I read, 42 horses started this track in 1928. Only 2 got to the finish line.
It's like one of the old Le Mans races, It's
after your heartfelt ode to horse love, this is like the track that you would never let your horse ride.
Right.
These horses are
after you spent $3 million raising your thoroughbred.
Now, you had one horse come on this track that is like the king of this track. We've got Man of War, Secretariat. These are the legendary horses of of not our day, but
of the day.
And on the Grand National, the legendary horse is Red Rum. Now let me do the thing.
Is that like the Stephen King reference?
I don't know, but he won the race 3 times in the 70s, and also came in second twice. So this horse must have been a jumping, swimming, speed down sucker.
He does it all. I'm pretty sure there's a biathlon element where the horse has to shoot a target at some point. There's so many things going on.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Just like I always do, I sat down and watched some of this track, some races on YouTube, right? I could get into this.
Yeah.
But the problem I have, it's a lot like American football. I love seeing some crazy action, but I don't want anyone to get actually hurt.
Yeah.
And these horses, they look like they're having a rough go of
It really is the problem.
Did you watch any of these?
Yeah. I'm with you 100%.
It's not like darts or anything.
You start to feel for the horses in.
You do. And the jockeys.
Yeah.
Those jockeys are getting mauled.
They're getting pounded on.
And one thing about this, unlike, say, NASCAR or something, you can be guaranteed multiple smash-ups on this. There's people ramming each other. It's crazy time.
Yeah. And again, just like snooker, just like darts, the best highlights to watch were from the 70s. Yeah.
I told you missed out, to be honest with you.
I did.
There was a lot going on in the 70s. People were just chilled out. Horses getting killed in piles.
Doesn't matter.
They're cool as ice.
Cool with it.
Red rum, baby. So, with a race like that and a pedigree like that, you've got to make a game for the Spectrum.
Yeah.
And so you got to crank up Grand National. Now, I made a note of this just because I thought it was pertinent. This game was authored by a fellow named Andy Williams, and his partner in crime was Paul Holmes. And I wrote down and it was published by Elite. So I had to write down, this was their next release directly after the Dukes of Hazzard had been released.
Wow.
So you went from jumping cars over water to jumping horses over water. And we haven't played Dukes of Hazzard, but I'm hoping you tap the O and
I love it. The O and the P.
and you hit the button and just,
Yeah.
can you imagine that? And it's a button for the horn.
Yep.
So Andy Williams, not the famous musician here,
No,
but
not the singer.
This is the famous
Star of
the
Stage and
famous
Screen.
programmer. He did. He's got an interesting like a lineage here. He did Bomb Jack 1 and 2. I didn't know there was a Bomb Jack 2. Did you know that? Maybe that's a home only.
Well, they did release Mighty Bomb Jack
Maybe
for
that's
the
it.
consoles.
Yeah.
Maybe that was it. Yeah.
Now get this. Oh, but we got to do this one. We've mentioned before. He did Fall Guy. It's got to be from the show.
I don't know.
I'm not the kind to kiss and tell, but I've been seen with Farrah. You don't remember that song?
Is that Farrah Fawcett?
Yeah, it was the show stars Lee Majors. He'd just been married to Farrah Fawcett. He sang the song.
Really?
Awesome. Also, he did Frank Bruno's boxing.
Oh.
If you're a boxing
Yeah.
fan, Frank Bruno is just. I know we've mentioned him on the show because his name comes
Well,
up.
I mean, he's the Ollie of Britain.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he is.
No, he's not.
Who's the Ollie of Britain?
Well, they've got a lot of good boxers in Britain.
It's Frank Bruno.
I think that's a little much. He also did a game called Coca-Tony Wolf. Well, we remember that one.
Yeah, we played that one.
Yeah, that was like wacky. Listen, with a name like Coca-Tony Wolf, you can't forget that one. Paul Holmes did Bomb Jack 1 and 2 as well. He did a game called Dust Man. Sounds intriguing.
That's I think that he goes around and he empties dustbins.
I think he visits my house all the time. He also worked on Frank Bruno, and he did apparently he did Tapper, Wild West Hero, Robotron 2084. So he's done some more like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, this is officially licensed from the Aintree Racecourse. They're not going to let anybody release a game unless you have to go out and pay for that license. And I wonder how many of these. I bet this was a series that's ran forever because I mean the concept of it's pretty sound. You had one player. As far as I could tell, this only came out on the Amiga. Yes, there's an Amiga port of this boat.
Wow.
I know.
AGSC, listen up.
How do we miss that? And it also came out on the iPhone. Apparently, they spruced it up for the phone. Original sales price of this bad boy, £6.95. And the budget price, you were right there at the £2
£1.99.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Exactly. So, boat, I've been droning on for a while. Why don't you talk about this game and your first impressions?
Okay, so this game is basically 2 games in one.
Yes.
It is a horse betting game where you can strictly play just betting the races, or you can play the action component of the game where you race the horse on the course yourself, or you can do both.
Yeah.
So when you load the game, you're immediately greeted with a screen in which if you want to bet on horses, you can. And basically after reading the docs, the game tried to simulate everything that would happen when you are betting. It's like you're preparing young gamers for a future career in betting the horses.
You know, it's funny you should mention that, just not to interrupt you, but I looked, I've got the docs right here because I wanted to bring this up. If you look at the documentation, because I had to look at it just to see how to control this thing. It lists all the stuff you can do betting wise, and it's like 1,000 things. Like they've covered every conceivable betting base.
What they have done is they've simplified the odds somewhat. So if you're ever at a real track and you want to bet the horses, then you'll have odds like 50 to 12 or something like that, and it's hard to understand. In this game, they've simplified all the odds. It's always a number to 1. So you know if this horse wins, you're going to get this multiplier to 1.
Yeah.
What they do is in order to make it more realistic, they do deduct a 10% buyer's premium, which is sort of the rake that the bookie gets or the track gets.
The house always wins.
The house always wins. And you have, not only do you have the odds, but you also have the form of the horse. And the form is basically from 1 to 10, how good the horse has performed recently. Now, if you look into the docs, this is outside of the game, but if you look into the docs, you can actually see how well the horses perform on various tracks. So just like there are certain tennis players that play better on clay, there are certain horses that perform better on less than ideal track conditions.
Yeah, your mudders.
Yeah,
they're the ones that do the mud.
You can look that up and you can bet accordingly.
My God, that just occurred to me. Can you imagine running this course in the mud?
No. 5 miles in the mud with all these fences and stuff.
You gotta say it motor style. In the mud.
You're talking about an Elmer's factory going on there.
Horrible but hilarious.
So anyway, once you've placed your bets, if you choose to place them, basically you start out, I think, with 1,000 pounds.
That's right.
And you can choose to bet any number on up to 5 horses. You can bet on up to 5 horses. You can hit S, and that starts the game. Oh, you also have to choose the horse that you want to race. So you sort of have a stable of horses that are on your team that you can choose from. You can't choose any horse in the race, but you can choose. You get a pretty good choice. So I always chose the horse that had the best odds to win for me to race with.
You could just bet on somebody else and then tank.
Right. You could always play the fade, as it were. So once the race starts, you have a screen full of information. One of the things that the Specky I've found really excels at is that the games tend to give you all the information you need and make full use of the total display. So you don't have HUDs that take up a lot of useless space. In this game, in the upper left-hand corner, you have the overall overhead map of the track, okay?
Yeah.
To the right of that, you have a side-on view of your horse, okay? And this is useful when you're doing jumping.
Yeah, you
can see how close you are coming up to the hedges, because you're going to want to jump over these hedges.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the majority of the screen, I'd say 2/3 of the screen, is filled with an overhead view of the track, which you can see your horse and your position relative to the other horses on the track, as well as any upcoming obstacles. The course is also lined with various types of greenery that you can admire as it passes you by. On the lower third of the screen, you have the total time, you have the number of horses in the race, and your position relative to the other horses. So it's just like any racing game is the same sort of thing. On the sides of the screen, I'd say if you would divide the screen into eighths, the eighth of the screen on the left.
Wow, you're right. I'm just saying that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the eighth of the screen is your speed, and the eighth of the screen on the right is your energy. If you delve into the documentation that's included with this game, you can see what horses do well sort of long-term when you want to conserve your energy to the end versus horses that need to have an early burst of speed and then sort of coast to the end. So this game is rather deep in that, and you control the speed of the horse by whipping the horse. This is one of
Non-stop.
I was going to say this is one of the things about horse racing that tends to make people a little uncomfortable, is that whenever you want the horse to go faster, you literally beat the horse to go faster.
It's effective though.
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying it's part of the game.
Yeah.
your horse's energy goes down as your speed increases, depending on how hard you've pushed the horse. So it's a balancing act. You don't want to run out of energy. If you run out of energy, you will run out of speed. But you don't want to conserve your energy too much, because then the other horses will just pass you by like you're standing still. So your job is to get around this track for however many laps you have to go around, and this is a very, very long race. As Americans, we're used to rather short horse races. The Triple Crown. The Triple Crown is only one lap. Each race is only one lap.
Oh yeah, they never do multiple laps.
And so that was surprising to me. You frequently have races that are over 5 minutes easily. And so anyway, the thing that makes this game maddeningly infuriating is that whenever you leap and you fail leaping over one of the hedges, your game is over.
You're boned.
It's all over.
Yeah.
And so what I chose to do after failing repeatedly was just betting on the horses. I just bet on the ponies, and I tried to collect money that way.
I think this game gets a lot of stuff right. I love the screen set up when you actually race.
I mean, it's I couldn't
perfect.
set it up any better.
And the fact that they've got the side on one of your horse, not only because when from the top down view, you don't get the obstacles don't have any gravity. You just see a long thing.
Mm-hmm.
From the side, you notice that they're different shapes. They're water. The hedges have a different makeup. The walls, and you have to time it differently. I mean, it tells you if other horses have fell out, so you know how many people you got left. It tells you your position. Like I said, it's got time. They've got the information down. It's got an overhead view of where you're out on the track. All good. So they've got that right. But they have some things, and maybe this is just because we're not used to this. This was like, if you ever played David Crane's Decathlon on the 2600, if you get into one of the actual decathlon races and you're waggling that joystick, you're begging to die.
Yeah, you're just waiting for the end.
I started this game up initially, of course, I never read the docs, and I couldn't move my horse. So when I figured out how to actually make him gallop and jump and stuff, I thought, my God, what do I have to do to make this race end? It just went on forever. Yeah. And that's too long. And by the time I ran my first race, I actually got around the track, believe it or not, without wrecking.
Wow.
It's not super difficult to jump the stuff.
You did better than I did.
But I begged to die because it was so long. And there were a few times where I literally just stopped racing, picked my hands up, and just went
shook
like
it out.
this.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm dying here. It's not realistic to whip your horse perpetually. In fact, a few years ago, I watched the progress of a horse. I can't remember. It had Sugar in its name. It had never felt the whip in competition ever.
Wow!
And I remember the first time they whipped it was like one of the Triple Crown.
Mm-hmm.
They finally whipped it, ended up losing. It had never felt the whip, so that you never would whip a horse as much as you do in this game, where you're just beating it.
I mean, it's just that's the only way to make it go.
You're beating the tar. Of course, this is not real. No one would do that in real life. Would be because the horse would just stop responding.
Right.
It wouldn't be like it would probably
turn around and kill you.
That'd be awesome. That'd be kind of funny. There is a magic equation between your energy output and your speed. I don't know what that equation is. Basically, my horse was a lot like me. I did feel for the horse because I was so tired that I never really ran through all my energy because I couldn't sustain hitting the other.
I had a hard time running out of energy, to be honest with you. Maybe it's because I died so early.
Did you ever complete a race?
No, I always fell to the hedge.
Trust me when I tell you, you will get low on energy, especially if you're. Like if Brent was playing this, for example, Mr. Track and Field, he'd probably kill that horse. He'd be running so hard. But me, I tried to keep it fairly steady. Jumping, I will say, Boat nailed it when it comes to jumping those hedges. You could be going along at a good clip, and you're watching yourself move with the leaderboard. And if you just mistime that jump, race over, you suck, and then you're out. So it's not mega hard to time them, but plenty of times I would just be a fraction of a second off and screw up and it'd be the end of the race.
Now this game is designed for you to run this race multiple years. Each race is a new year. So when you finish, you collect your winnings, and then you move on to the next year. This whole race revolves. It would be like, for us, it would be like Kentucky Derby, the game. They only run the Derby once a year. So they are depending on you running this race multiple times and building a legacy.
Yeah, yeah. And here, I'll get to my last major complaint. You can move your horse left and right. You gallop, you whip him, and you also can jump. Your controls. This game is very slow. It is very slow. You could rocket ship that. You could be hauling tail on that horse, but he's just creeping along. And we all know why. Because it's a limitation of the hardware.
Yeah.
And the thing, it's not like there's nothing going on. They got crap going on all over the place here. But he does meander along, and that doesn't help you in terms of your ability to hit that button over and over. I did not do what you did. I would always bet and I would always race. When I played it, just because I figured I might as well try both. I don't know how well you did at betting.
I never won.
I very rarely won.
It's sort of like real life.
Yeah. And now, if you're a true bettor, you look at the history of the horse. Like you said, you look at the conditions it runs best in and whatnot. And so I'm guessing that if you really were an astute player, but of course, you would have many races to compare a horse to. And on top of that, though, we are talking about American style or non-steeplechase horse racing where they just go around a loop. It would be hard to handicap horses on this track.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
you would never know.
The long shots could win a lot.
Yeah.
And I bet if we looked at the history of this particular race, I bet a lot of long shots have won. Because really, unless you're Red Rum, like who the heck is going to bet?
Well, you've got to have odds. You've got to have some horses.
I understand, but the odds could mean less. I watch a lot of MMA. UFC odds are usually quite accurate. But if you're watching like Uncle Jim's MMA Jamboree held out the barn, and you've got like Billy Bob taking on Goof McGee, and these guys have had like 3 fights locally, and you try to put odds on them, they're going to be goofy odds.
Right.
It's the same thing. You've got the fact that you would race a horse in this more than once, it shows me a certain disdain for the horse.
Yeah.
Because it is crazy. Now, but I will say this game has a lot going for it. And in terms of a race simulator, from my understanding, Boat, this was the first one on the Specky anyway. Maybe I don't know about a whole lot of these. I know Japan has a lot of these, so maybe they did something. But this was quite an achievement when it came out. Because of what it allowed you to do. And I will say, it reminds me sort of like having, say, like a really good fruit machine. Or a slot machine where you could it'd be fun to play, or even playing like poker. So if you're a gambling type, and this is your poison.
Well, it really, it covered all the bases, because if you just wanted to play it as a gambling simulator, you could.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted the action part was there as well.
Now, here's what we can't comment on. We can't comment on how the algorithms for the gambling did. I did not. I guess if I played this a lot, I could get it, but I couldn't. There's no way I could figure it out without actually playing it a lot to see if they were accurate, So I'm not going to sit here and say much about the actual abilities of this thing to handicap races and make it fun.
Yeah.
Or your ability to glean what you need to know off of this would be difficult.
It's not like reading a race report. Like if you go to the track and you buy one of the papers that gives you the report on each of the horses, they go into the background, they go into where it was raised, where it was trained, who the trainer is, what kind of success. You don't get any of that stuff in this game, so it does leave something on the table there, and I'm sure that future horse racing simulation games would cover that. But as it is, when did this come out? 83?
85.
Yeah. I think that this is pretty good.
Again, I just think that, and I'll tell you something else I would like to see. It would be multiple tracks or shorter tracks or something like that.
Yeah, I'd love to see just a one lap. I guess this something you could compete under a minute.
This game is made and undermined by its license, basically. Yeah. If you needed something smaller to run in, I did look up some reviews on this Boatster, and what you've got here is the World of Spectrum, my go-to site, gave this a very good score, 7.96. Now, Tilt magazine. I love them. I like their French. 83%. 80. Now get this, 83 percent out of 100. Sometimes it's a little weird with some of these magazines. Yeah. Sinclair User gave this an 80%, and when they reviewed it, and your Spectrum gave it 73%, and Crash gave it a 79%. I think I'm in that same area there. It's got good graphics. It's functional. It's been cleverly designed. The implementation is very good. It's just slow and plodding and long.
Yeah.
And that's the downfall.
Right. We did get a couple Discord reviews on this. Graham Vedke says, I am hard-pressed to think of another decent horse racing game from the 8-bit era. This game is very niche, but riding a horse in this well-known horse race is quite charming. The gameplay overall makes it quite difficult to win, unless I'm just a shocking jockey. And it does run a little slow and have castanet-type sounds. I actually thought the sounds were
And
it
okay. Has music that's not, it's not totally Spectrum-like music.
It goes through all your sort of famous horse racing type tunes.
Yes, it
does. The William Tell overtures there. And Chris Fold says, I've loved this game since I played it as a child. It's slow, a little unfair at times, but always draws me back. Plus, it reminds me of my gran, who loved the horse racing. 8 out of 10.
You know, when there used to be just right down the street from you, Boat. There was a grocery store.
It's called a CIS.
Well, before it was called Foodland. Foodland.
Really?
Yeah.
Even before it was Culloden Independent Supermarket.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, way before that. And the Foodlands were all over this area.
Now it's a food fair.
And Foodland would give you these little cards when you went there.
I like little cards.
And every night on, I think it was WSAZ, the local station, they would play a horse race, a half hour of horse races, and you'd have your little cards, and if your horse came in, you would get a goodie.
What happened to that?
That was when I was a young lad. Now, the funny thing is, I always heard that these horse races were taped all over the world. So all of this was a scam.
It was all a sham, yeah.
You know, they knew which tickets were going to be to cash in, but still the fact that in my lifetime, I could go down to the store that's less than a mile from here and go in and get a tiny little Foodland racing form, and he'd go home. I used to watch them all the time when I was a kid, for the couple years they did it, and we'd watch the horses.
Did A to Z do that too?
A to Z never did. It was just that was a Foodland thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
So there you go. That's my horse racing story. And by the way, you mentioned going down and getting your little program at the racetrack. We used to print those in the print shop. I used to use an old school printer, real handle job, and then they got computerized ones, and that was the end of that job.
Yeah.
So another of my litany of jobs I shut down.
Tell me about how you got that job over there at the track.
I applied. It was quite simple. I needed a job, and
was this after Lexington?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I worked at the track.
So this was after Lexington, but before you started working for the boss man.
There's a hilarious story beside that. I'll tell you, I can't tell it on the air, though. Unfortunately, it's a lot blue.
All right. Well, we want to thank all the fine folks that are hanging us out to dry. Right.
Thanks, guys.
In the chat, we got Pixels at Dawn, Wishbone, Terror K, Lob, Terminator X, Treyguard 1982, Picard 2005. We got a lot of year names.
I like when Terror came in. Everyone was going, "Hi, Terror." I don't know what struck me as funny about that.
Terror. He's been commenting on the Amiga platformers posts, and he is a wealth of knowledge. We're glad to have Terror K around.
What's the K stand for, Boat?
Killer. He's a terror killer. He kills terror. He's a good guy.
Oh, okay.
He's a face.
Okay. Fair enough. Why did I teach you wrestling lingo? I'm going to regret that till the day I die.
All right, and we also want to thank our awesome supporters that support the show on Patreon. Laurent Giroux, Gary, Heather, Eric Nelson, Harbonaut, Graham Vebke, Frodo NL, Tapes from the Crypt, Pixels at Dawn, Chris Folds, Paul Bossman Harrington, and Christopher Hassel. Thank you guys so much for supporting it. And if you like Our Sinclair and you want to support the show, patreon.com/Our Sinclair. Aaron, next week, we're going to play Paperboy.
Oh, boy. Before we close up, I got to tell you, and I've fallen in love with the Sinclair. And when I knew we were doing a horse racing, I was so excited because I hear about all these horse racing, but I never get to play any of them. I hear they're mostly in Japan and Japanese. And this, it wasn't the best game ever, no, but I thought it was great. And so every week there's something, it's a totally wacky. So now Paperboy, now I don't know about you, but I used to play this in the arcade. And it was, I really was a big fan of this game, so I can't wait to see what they've managed.
Well,
to
I used to
port
play it
over.
on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Not as cool.
They call it the definitive version.
Listen, no.
Playing with that little D-pad,
Yep,
it can't compare with the handlebars. That's
next
old
week,
school.
I will tell you how I almost purchased a Paperboy arcade machine.
Oh, can't wait.
It's an interesting tale.
All right, guys. Hope you tune in then. Until then, keep playing the Sinclair. Until then, rewind tape.
And press play.